Well, good afternoon. Welcome to session 4 of the second Malaysia Digital Economy Summit. Our topic for today is a whole new contactless world, the rise of digital identity. By accelerating digital adoption, the COVID-19 pandemic has widened the gap between the top and bottom companies on the power curve of economic profit. Amplifying winner takes most dynamics and further separating digital leaders from the also runs. Competitive differentiation, now more than ever, emerges from superior digital capabilities and technology endowment, more agile delivery, and a progressively more tech-savvy C-suite. Digital's ascendancy is visible not only in the dominance of hyperscale tech companies, but also in the success of non-digital native companies, as shared by the previous session. So these companies have invested heavily in new digitally enabled strategies and also business models. Not only did they enter the pandemic with bigger technology endowments than their peers, they continue to outspend them on digital technology as the pandemic went along. The advent of the digital economy brings up a key enabler, the digital identity. So an identity is a key component to conduct a transaction, be it online world or the physical world. We are all familiar with the physical world. We can identify a person through a national ID or passport or maybe a driving license and you name it. But what do we use in the virtual world, in the digital world? You may say digital ID. The question is, what is digital identity? Different people have a different interpretation of that. Today, there are a few methods deployed by public and private sector organizations to identify and verify a person or an entity. And we have heard of some of the familiar terms as well, such as PKI, EKYC, digital signature. In fact, Malaysia is one of the earlier adopter of digital signature. We even have Digital Signature Act when MSC was first introduced. So to help us understand this topic better, I'm happy to introduce today's panelists, Mr. C from Skillmetric, Mr. Nagendran from Sensoft, and Mr. George Lee from Innovative. So please join me to welcome them. I know in the virtual world, you can do the simply just clap your hand. So without further ado, let me pose my first questions to all the panelists. What is digital identity and the role it plays in this digital world? So to start the discussion, may I invite Mr. C to share his view? Mr. C, we can't hear you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dato'. And very good afternoon and hello everyone. Thank you KSI to having me here for the second Malaysia Digital Economy Summit. And today my name is Sidong Sia, and today I'm going to speak to all of you about some detail about technology on digital identity. Let me explain a little bit our background. And my group is basically formed with a technical engineer, basically, all of them, and specialized and expert in the domain of security, digital security, and also PKI, like Lato mentioned just now, public key infrastructure. And as you know, what our company offers solution digital security and also PKI solution, which is key component of the digital transformation. That I think the idea of digital transformation have been introduced and explained well from previous presenters. Okay, and let me start with my presentation on talking a little bit about digital identity. As mentioned by Dr. Sao, there is a virtual world and a physical world, that how you going to validate or authenticate the person. So digital identity basically is a set of validate digital attribute and the credential. And for the digital world, that quite similar to a person identity, that you need to validate a person in the physical or real world. So for this information to form the digital identity, I can basically group it into the two categories, which is I explained in detail. What is that? Then the first attribute should be a digital attribute, and the second will be the digital activity. Okay, so for this combination together can be used to identify a person in the virtual world. Okay, what is a digital attribute? Okay, digital attribute, other layman term, sometimes we call it also personality identifiable information, which include the online record access and also to the private and the public sector, and also so for the government services. For example, I give some example of this so-called digital attribute component in the digital identity. First, of course, the very important document, which is a government issue ID. Like Dato mentioned just passport, driving license, even my card as a key component for this digital attribute to identify the person. And the second is other ID number, for example, at social number or any other tax number, for example, also can be part of the digital attribute. And you can see like today, example, the IC number also. And today, date of birth also can be example of a digital attribute. And other information such as so-called medical record, bank detail, and the email address, and also the biometric data like fingerprint and also face recognition, iris, for example. And also some badge and token. But important also is a login credential like digital identity that you can use for authenticate through the digital world. Like for example, the simple one is a username and password. For digital activity, actually it is an online behavior pattern that use always did in the virtual world. For example, when you do a search, the search history is one of the activity. Example, digital activity for you personally. And the second one, I think, should be more usage in most of the user, like social media activity. For example, what the article you like, or what are the article or any comment you have put inside the social media, and what have you shared in the social media. And also some photo, Facebook, Instagram, for example, all these are your behavior pattern on this digital activity. And also some we call it self mobile phone usage also can be one of your pattern, the user pattern. And also, for example, if you like to do online purchase, so the purchase history also can be part of the digital activity. And also geography tagging, that we go to certain place that you tag yourself that you have been visit A, B, C, or any location. And also, let's say if you use a mobile app, that the mobile phone that you download the mobile application is also considered the online behavior pattern. So I have introduced already all these so-called what is digital identity. And today you can see I introduce a bit the example with the digital ID have been well recognized in the world today, like with a specific credential that it can be used for actually authentication the owner of the user. For example, like ASEAN is quite famous using unique ID number, like in India digital ID implementation. And as well known in Europe, for example, Finland, Switzerland, and Estonia is famous. They are using bank ID as their digital ID, and also EID card, like what the implementation like in Europe, also like in Germany, Italy, Spain, or Portugal. So they all can be used for authenticate its owner. For nearby our ASEAN, actually, there is a two country basically implement quite well known their national digital ID initiative. So the first one will be is Singapore, that they have a Singapore national digital identity called SingPass that have been implemented and well known, and also have been used by their government and the private sector services. And the second one, I just know about is Thailand National Digital Identity, and DID also is one of the example that have been implemented in our ASEAN countries that starting using digital identity. So those credentials may include also, for example, all the digital ID. It may be include also the digital identity certificate. So this is type of the PKI component. There is a S509, for example, base of the digital certificate that basically you to sign electronic sign the consent about that you want to do any transaction, for example, or you want to transfer any data. And often the seal or often some integrity protection also is one of the key component that you can protect the integrity of the certain information, and also to set the timestamp that currently have been used by the digital ID. So before I pass over to Dato, let me show you what are the usage digital ID in those countries in summary. So I can actually list down in 4 areas, basically that the usage of digital identity. The first one, some they call it e-government or digital government. And the second one is, I think today, because of the pandemic, there is a quite important sector, which is a digital health center, which is most of the country having digital ID, having this area that using digital ID for their digital health center. And the next one is about the e-payment or we call it cashless payment, and also financial services area. And the last one you can see like Singapore, Thailand, and even the Japan also start working on smart digital society, and also some area of smart city. Okay, I think that's all my introduction and talking about what is a digital identity. I pass back to Dato.
Thank you, Mr. C. Very interesting perspective from C. He introduced to us his interpretation of digital ID, because as a company that has been implementing all the cybersecurity solution for many years, so we should remember these two terminology: digital attributes and also digital activities. So this is how organizations or some company identify their client, their customer using the attributes and activity, and also the areas of usage. Later, perhaps you can hear more from the other two panelists on this. So may I now invite George to share his view on this topic: what is digital identity and the role it plays in the digital world? Because I understand that his company has been implementing many solutions, especially eKYC. So this will be very interesting to understand as well. George, off to you.
Sure. Thank you, Dato Ng. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Josh Lee, and I'm the CEO of Innovative Solution. Yeah, so it was right. You know, we are doing eKYC solution, and I think the interesting perspective from us is that we see the trend of the need of a digital ID, as well as how organizations out there are evolving into digitally identifying their customers. So as we implement, you know, eKYC solution to the market over the past few years, I think I can actually share some of those observations, which will then make it a little bit more interesting of what we are seeing that's really happening in the market today. You know, with the pandemic, you know, we see a high growth, yeah, in terms of demand for our eKYC solution. And in the last 2 years, we see an average of about 40 to 60% growth in demand from the markets, yeah, for the need of eKYC solution. And they are mainly coming from regulated industry, such as the telecommunication industries, such as the financial institution, as well as the fintech. But interesting enough, although these are the majority of those guys, we are also seeing new trends of digital businesses or some traditional businesses moving into the digital path that is actually inquiring and looking into the eKYC. So we are seeing things like property tech, car sharing platform, car trading platform, insurtech, investment tech company, even logistic company, and various others, different kind of organization. So everyone is also starting to realize that, hey, there's a need for businesses to basically verify the identity of the customer. So these are the trends that we are seeing, and obviously this will also mean that in the future, it will be more and more common for organization of businesses to basically ask to verify the ID of the customer when they are signing them up, right? And that's where digital ID fall into play nicely. But what we are seeing mainly is what is happening today is not so much a formal digital ID, maybe not to what Mr. C have described. I think what Mr. C have described is a very, very big picture, very comprehensive into what digital ID should and will be. But of today, what we see are businesses are basically adopting things like eKYC to do one thing, which is ID verification. So I just need to know that the person who you say you are behind the computer or the smartphone screen is true. So we are doing a verification, whether is it I'm verifying your IC simply by capturing the photo of your IC, I'm verifying it, picking up the details from your IC, taking a selfie of yourself, and I want to check that you are a live person, not a piece of photo and all that, comparing to the IC photo and make sure that you match. So that's what businesses are doing today. The next trend that we are seeing that businesses will be doing and how they are utilizing these in the form of a digital ID is to do biometric authorization. So when we say biometric authorization is that when they are doing the eKYC step, naturally they are capturing your facial, right? Or certain organization that we talk to, they say, oh, we want to capture more, whether it's the iris, whether it's the fingerprint, but it's some sort of unique biometric. So what they are doing here, they're doing an ID verification step. First, I verified you, then I want to store some form of your biometric information. And how I will use this biometric information is to do a biometric authorization in the future, so that I only eKYC you one time. After this, you come in. So for example, remittance, for example, after this, you come in every time. I want to make sure that you are the person that's actually behind the screen sending out money and not someone else misusing your account, for example. So this is how it will be used. These are more in the consumer sector, but you will also have a very interesting case in terms of B2B, all right, or rather in the business sector. For example, I want to manage employees, all right. Nowadays, there are a lot of gig economies, e-commerce is on the rise, there are a lot of need for delivery, logistic, and so on. So for example, if I'm a logistic provider and I have 10 vans or whatever that I'm providing out there, I want to maybe periodically, do a biometric check whether my guys are the one behind the wheel or not, or they stop the van now and do something else, right? So these are all the different cases that's going on, and even we foresee in the short term, even the public sector, the government sector may also be adopting this. Because now I think recently with the road tax and renewal and license renewal, there were a lot of hoo-ha where people say that they can't even get enough appointment to go to the counter to perform government services. So can government also look into this to enable the rakyat to even do many things, passport renewal, whatever? At least I do the eKYC first, I make sure you're genuine, do the services online. When the thing is ready, you come and you collect, let's say, for example. So this is how we see the trend that is basically going. Of course, along the way, what a lot of these organizations are also doing, they are also calling what we call third-party data sources to also check the validity of your ID. All right. Yes, I verified you. You are the person in the IC. Your IC looks genuine, but what are the other information that I can further authenticate you? Maybe I check against your bank account. Maybe I check against your credit report. Maybe I check against your telco to make sure that you exist. So this is generally what we see as a form of digital ID today, and how businesses are using it. Thank you, Dato.
Thank you, George. That's so interesting because we started with C, who talked about the big picture and the technology behind it. And then moving on to George, he was sharing with us in the real life experience how some companies have started adopting it, especially the non-regulated sector, but they still need to authenticate the user through the eKYC method. So it's something that for the business entity to start looking at, because it's really, really important. And now moving on is for Mr. Nugget. Guess we have C and George, they are like a service provider, and their bread and butter is actually providing cybersecurity related services to their customer. I would term Mr. Nugget company sense of as somewhere in between, because they provide technology services, but they're also user of solution from a company like Securmetric and Innovative. And he implement it for his customers. And I understand that he is now implementing some projects, especially with the government of Malaysia. So it'll be great to hear his experience, challenges that he is facing in implementing such solution. Maybe started from your Sega and all the way to your system with MOT. Over to you, Mr. Nugget.
Thank you, Dato. I'd like to just share, I got a few slides I'd like to share, if that's okay. Okay. So, can you all see my slides?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So basically, we are looking at, I think C and George, they are the key technical people on making these things happen. Digital identity per se. SenseOff is an organization that is actually more on the product. We build applications for government, mainly in the accounting finance sector. And one of the key things we also involve is also operational systems. So when you ask about what is digital identity, okay, it's just digital identity information on an entity used by a computer system. So what is to represent an external agent? So normally we think identity, we think people, but an organization is also an identity. An application is also an identity, and device also. So sometimes on the network world nowadays, you have your IP number, so that is a form of identity. But in case of people, we are talking about more towards people nowadays. So in Malaysia, of course, in Malaysia, we have our ID card. So when you have an ID card, it is already your identity at the moment. If you go to Australia, Australia does not have an ID. They have to combine IDs. They have a driving license. They might have your resident ID, and then they add another one, and then they know it is you. Whereas for us, it's very straightforward. We have an ID card. So if you look at the global context-wise, when you look at 7.6 billion people in the world, nearly 1 billion people are estimated to lack a legal recognized form of ID. Okay, they don't have an ID. They are people in a country, but there is no way of ID to identify them. And there's about 3.4 people in some form or other have an ID. Like for us, we have an ID. Our IC is our ID. That's what it is. But is there a digital trail of this? That is where the question comes in now, when you want to start to go into digitizing a lot of your applications. And about 3.2 people have some form of ID and also have digital trail. I think C mentioned a few countries just now already implementing this. Okay. So if you look at digital ID could unlock economic value in terms of GDP also, right? So there is, of course, US, UK, they are already there, but the other countries, developing country, emerging economies, that is also another big thing that is happening at the moment. Okay. So what is Malaysia doing? And if you look at Malaysia, in fact, today's paper, so ironic it is that today we are having a talk on this, and the government, it was announced today, and it's going to roll out the digital ID by 2024. And in the My Digital roadmap, the drive for digital transformation is led by, of course, the Home Ministry, because JPN is the so-called single source of truth for an ID of a person, right? JPN, Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, or National ID. They are the single source of truth, actually. So now they are already getting into to go and roll out. And today's newspaper, if you can read the Star, the minister has already said that by 2024, we will be doing this implementation of the national ID. And the full target implementation is by 2025. So it's not very far away. It's just 4 years. Malaysia is going to have some form of digital ID. Okay. And if you look at it, how will the national ID complement MyCard? Is basically complementing a MyCard, like what George just now mentioned. Even the system that we are building for Ministry of Transport now requires you, when you come and register as to get an ID in the system, you have a user ID. So you put in your photostat of your IC, you upload everything, all that is being done. But finally they say, please come to the counter to verify via your MyCard. Okay, so you bring your MyCard, you come to the counter, you plug it in, and then you put your thumbprint, and then they say, yeah, you are you. So what that biometric process is doing is, it's validating your biometric image in your card against what you are taking in. Okay, so that's what we have been doing. You go to bank, that's what happens. And you know the challenges you face, right? You put your thumbprint and the thing doesn't read. Okay, because I know maybe your hand, you have a cut in the thumb, so it cannot read. So then what happens? The bank officer will then take a photostat, everything, ask you to put your thumbprint on there, left and right, and then sign it. So back to normal, going back to your basic manual kind of things. So this is what has been happening. And if you know, just now George mentioned about cars, people doing trading in cars. Today, I think you can sell car. You go to MyTuka or Kasam, you can just sell your car online. You know, the guy comes to your house, takes the car and go back. And he does all the entire transaction online. But you know one of the challenge? If he cannot get your thumbprint to verify against your MyCard, you cannot sell your car. You have to go back to JPN, get a new card and come back. So that's a big challenge, right? So in the national ID, what they're trying to do is, finally they're creating an ID which is electronically can be complemented with the MyCard. So this is what we are trying to do. It's a complement rather than replacement. It is not replacing. MyCard is a proof of your citizenship. There's no change to that. But the national ID will be different. Okay, it will complement. So people like us who build systems will find it very easy. Just now George mentioned about eKYC. Okay, that is validating or a person. You are you. You took a photograph. Yes, you moved. So you are really you. It's not an image of you. So this is what they are doing. But this one will take you to the next level. So how can national ID, digital ID be used in government services? Well, there are many. You know, texting, text, and of course the future is e-voting, right? I think already in the last election they were talking about e-voting. So when you want to do e-voting, you need to know that you are actually, you have a national digital ID. If not, what's the idea of saying e-voting and then you have to come somewhere and put your MyCard and put your thumbprint again? You lose the whole benefit, right? So these are the ways government ministries are implementing. But the biggest challenge in the government ministry is actually changing the policies. As you know, a lot of ministries would have had policies, the old policies, and currently it's the current policy is the biometric reader. Okay, so they introduced biometric reader many years ago. So the policy says you still come there, put your thumbprint, so now that policy needs to be changed a bit to handle digital ID so that public saves time, reduce possibility of user identity being stolen, improve overall customer satisfaction. So these are some of the areas that we are working on. Sense of, we have already started this work. We have worked with Secure Metrics and people like George's team to handle eKYC, digital signing. So we are already involved in that at the moment. Okay, thank you, Dato. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagan. So it's really interesting. And thanks for telling us about the latest announcement. So looks like a digital ID is not too far from us. Before
Yes.
that, we can select the specific solution we want to use. I'm not sure moving forward with the national digital ID introduced, will this become compulsory for all the business entity to adopt? I think this is something that yet to be seen.
Yes.
Anyway, I want to change a little bit from the big picture about what digital ID is, how it's being used, to something maybe as an individual or as a customer will be very interested to find out, which is very much from the user perspective. So I would like to ask a panelist your advice to the users on managing and protecting user identity. See, why this is important is that a lot of us, sometimes we're overprotecting, sometimes we're underprotecting. We really do not know how to manage our own identity when we come to the virtual world. So since we were talking about the usage of the national identity, digital identity just now, maybe I will come back and ask Mr. Nagan to continue to share with us on your perspective and your advice to the users on managing and protecting their own identity. We'll start with you, Mr. Nagan.
Thank you. I guess it's the same story about protecting your own property, right? You have your house, at night you lock up the house and all that. You don't leave the key outside the house and come inside the house, right? Or your car, for example, you don't leave the key in the car and go away. You know the car is going to be stolen for sure, right? So this is the same thing people do in the virtual world. They will log into various systems, and every time the password will be the same. It'll be my birthday, my wife's birthday, my dog's birthday or something like that, or name. They don't take the seriousness, even though if you look at today's any application you log in, they will ask you to have minimum of 8 characters with one special character, capital, lowercase. But you cannot remember all this, right? Every site you go in wants you to register. And then of course now they have this famous sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook. So everybody have only one password lah. So I just have that and I go in. So it is actually the public needs to be educated on the importance of making sure your digital ID is maintained carefully. You would not want to go and give your IC to anybody nowadays, right? I mean, you won't go and even I think when you go to a place where they ask you for ID, a lot of people don't leave their my card there.
Actually, it's illegal. It's illegal for people to ask for your
Correct.
ID. Yeah.
Correct. And if they ask, at the most you leave is your driving license or you leave your calling card lah. Say, this is my calling card. That you will do that, but you will not leave your my card anywhere, right? Same thing. I mean, this is the protection. That's why the education is important. The awareness to the public. If you're not going to be aware of the importance of your password and sharing it around, nowadays, credit card, everybody got that 6-pin, right? So suddenly my credit card, my son is using so he goes and buys something and he uses, which is wrong actually, right? You can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that, because finally you are the one who's liable for it. If anything happens, it is you who's liable. So I think public must be aware. Digital world is something you cannot run away from, but you need to find a way to be serious about it and protect your identity. And I think there's a movie on how stolen identity, right? Identity theft. Like I remember seeing it a long time ago, right? How they can They can change whoever you are.
Mm.
You know, you're no more you if you're doing a digital ID. You know, but at least Malaysia, at least we got our my card lah. So hold that lah. You know what I mean? So even if there's a digital theft, you still got your my card. You can go and say, hey, this is my card. So anyway, that's the challenges public faces. Yeah.
Very interesting. So Nagel is giving us a perspective of, as an individual, how we should be protecting our password and ID and don't share it with others. I want to go back to what C talked about earlier, because you always leave a digital trail when you are online. So be it your digital attributes that you give it to people or through your activity. So how do we then manage the situation? Because you may not give your password, but they have a way to identify you. See.
Okay. Actually, when you actually go to this virtual world, basically your activity will be recorded. But what you can do to protect your identity is try to limit sharing any any information, identity about you. For example, your IC number, maybe your phone number is more on your own information. So do not share those type information in any social media or any site. And second is if they say you access to any social media that there is a lot of your activity have been visible to other. So what you can do is you need to know about review. Actually, you need to go review your application, like for example like social media, the permission and the privacy policy that you need to set to limit the information can be viewed by general or only your friend or only your group people that can be visible to your activity. And as a technical, so I advise, they say if you go to any site that are unprotected, not SSL, for example, do not visit or give log in with any your credential. And also, I think most of the user, I advise at my technical viewpoint, is you can see today a lot of people don't update even their browser and live for maybe 1 or 2 years. So that is possible to leak out your information that uncached or unupdated software used on your computer. So that's my comment.
Interesting. So I believe just now when Nagin and also C talked a lot about individual, but how about in the business world? Because now all of us are using digital platform to conduct our business, and we'll be user to some representing company. Sometimes it's for payment, sometimes it's for a quotation. They're all kind of things. So George, you have any view on this? For any advice to the business community on protecting the identity, and not to forget, just now Nagin talk about identity. It's not sometimes it's not just a person; it can be all kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first of all, we got to see what sort of industry is the business in. So if you are in a regulated industry, then you have to pay a lot of attention, to the guideline that's provided by the regulator. So if those who fall under Bank Negara, for example, or fall under MCMC, there are very clear guidelines as to how KYC to be done. Not just eKYC, when they say the whole eKYC process, the whole know your customer process, how is it to be done, how data should be stored, how you should manage data privacy as well. So for those business, then of course it's very clear, they just have to follow the guideline. And for consumers, when you are dealing with this kind of businesses, you can be assured that they need to perform various precautions before they can even capture your data. Otherwise, they'll be liable to penalty by the regulators and so on. For businesses that is not regulated, however, then of course there's more free hand into it. But today, we see so many news of ransomware, data leak, and so on and so forth. So your business reputation is at stake whenever you are dealing with customer data. So you have to be very mindful of that. So the way that you capture customer data is also important. What we have observed is, there are some businesses that just leave it to you and say that, here's a link, just upload any photo that you say is your IC. I don't even care where you get it from. All right. Our recommendation is that you have to make sure that your platform to do uploading is from a live capturing of the IC. For example, it has to be from the mobile phone or the mobile web, where we straight away call the camera and you capture it, and not allowing the users to, let's say, basically upload from the PC. The reason why is that most of the time that's where fraud happens. All right, the fraudster will download some sort of identity image online, and then they will basically do the modification, save it, and upload to any platform that accepts it. So first of all, you are exposing yourself more to fraudulent ID. Secondly, you are also not giving the assurance to the customer. So for the customer, then, when you also look at how businesses accept your ID, you have to take your own precaution. If they are just asking you to upload, I have joined some site before where they need to identify my ID. What they ask me to do is to hold my ID card next to me and take a photo. Instantly, from those instances, I know they are doing what we call a human citing process. Now, in those cases, what you want to do is put a watermark on your IC. That's how you protect yourself, because sending it to the back end, as much as the businesses have the policy to say that you can't take the data out and all that, sometimes we cannot control what the staff do. And that's where leakages can happen, right? So for businesses also, you need to have platform where you ensure that, let's say, for example, if people submit to your platform, put in auto watermark, for example, ensure that your employees can't, or your agents. Sometimes it's also agent, certain businesses, there are many agents. Your agent can't be the one that's taking the data out. So I think these are the necessary precaution that needed to be done. Whether is it you are a consumer or you are a business, so you have to evaluate the process of how are you capturing the ID of the customers. Make sure you have all the necessary precaution. Make sure that you store them securely and have necessary backup and so on. I mean, these are the very basics of security, but it's very important because the moment something happened and the leakages, the news go out, basically the company reputation is at stake. Yeah, so that will be the key advice from me.
Yeah, kind of agree more with George on that one, because whenever we hear anything about the data leakages and all, we all be so concerned, and then some of the company may suffer greatly because of that bad reputation. The next topic I'm interested to explore with the panelists is actually on the outlook of digital economy and the evolution of digital identity, because we know that we cannot run away, and throughout the whole day the discussion is about the impact of the digital economy, the contactless world, and we also know that when you are in the digital world, the digital identity is so key. So much so that a lot of countries have introduced their digital ID. In Malaysia, will be introducing it very soon. So let's hear from the panelists on their view of the outlook of digital economy and the evolution of digital identity that goes with it. Perhaps I can start with C on this topic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, To. So for me, is I can categorize these two areas. So one is you can see today even digital identity. So for the problem of the credential, which is a username password, right? We always have a problem to reset all this. So for the future, or the F1, we call it F1 authentication, maybe like us, we try to do on the passwordless authentication, which is without password, that can be more secure way to authenticate and to prevent all these man in the middle and other attacks. So passwordless will be the next generation of the good authentication method. And the second one is you can see today the usage of digital ID and in many areas. So what do you think about that? Like I think I working with SingPass on some work of integration. So you imagine that you can sign your contract with the digital ID that the government implemented. So that another area we should look for it and seriously thinking about that. We can sign the $1 million even later with the legal binding contract with the digital ID. So there is a two area or two topic that I think should be the future that our national digital should be thinking of. Thank you.
So does that mean that we need to change policy regulations in order to support this, what you're talking about?
Correct, yes.
George, any view on this one?
Well, I think to me, definitely digital ID will be the trend moving forward, and it will definitely be part of our daily life. At this moment, I see it as, from what we see currently in the market, is something that's been used by the businesses, to authenticate or verify their customer. But I see the point is that it will go down to the point in the future where a normal citizen will be using it to verify another normal citizen. All right. So it become people to people kind of verification in the future. It's just like, for example, okay, if I want to, let's say, hire a helper in the house, this person come, I want to check the IC. Are you, you sure you are legal working here? Are you okay and all that, right? And that kind of thing. Now I just take a look at the IC lah, right? But in the future, it could also be digital. Yeah, I mean, more and more of this platform come out, and I even foresee and I don't discount the fact that even future, our youngsters will be verifying or authenticating the date, right? I just saw in the news today, one father drove the son, 18 years old, to Taipei from KL to have his first date with a girlfriend. They met online.
You're not kidding me.
Serious? Yes, in the news
Wow.
today, because the father is worried and all that. So I foresee this will be it, the future would even be, the youngsters will verify each other before we go out dating. But it's a form of security, right? I mean, for me, when my daughter is at the dating age, I think I want her to do that. So I think this will be the trend moving forward. So it's no longer just something that's used by business or government, but it will go into our daily life, and that's what I really think. Or simple example, if I want to renovate my house, a lot of contractors are like, proprietor business, one-man show kind of thing. If he come and give me a quote, how do I know who he really say he is? I pay a down payment, 30,000-40,000. He put some cement and sand in front of the house, and then next thing you know, the guy is gone. All right. So I may, as a consumer, I may even want to verify that guy before I pay him. And the verification I would see is that in the future, our digital ID will not just be who you are, but what you are. And I think this will be the trend going forward. And what I really meant is that, yes, you verify that I'm George Lee, but you may want to know more about me, depending on what am I engaging with you. So if I'm, in the future, let's say it's a banking institution, probably the moment you verify my ID, all my financial data is already somehow linked to my digital ID already. I don't even have to submit the EPF statement, salary slip, like now if I want to take a car loan, there are so many things to submit. But with digital ID, the possibilities is there in the future is that the moment I'm verified, all my information is there. So it's like almost instant. At the car showroom, I already know loan approved, not approved. Then with things like signing cloud, immediately sign, JPJ go up. After a teh tarik, I drive my car away. So that could be the future and what this technology, can do to us. So this is how I really see digital ID will evolve and how we really move down to our daily life.
Very interesting view. Somehow I got scared as well, because if, let's say, everything about me is somewhere and somebody can find out. But also pick out something like, because you say for certain different purpose, do you think digital ID is unique to attach to an entity, or for different purpose there should be different ID, digital ID?
They will be
multiple identity.
Yes, they will be. Of course, we have personal or businesses or organization will also have You know, I mean, like today we say we do eKYC, but we're also doing eKYB, right? I need to identify. So for example, you know, if I'm a director of two companies, for example, I'm also part of the digital identity of the company in some way. So there will be also identities for company, there will be identities for individual. Yeah, so I do foresee that will be how things will go.
Interesting. Mr. Nagan, as a company that deploying so many applications for so many customers, so what do you foresee is going to happen next? And also, since we are on this topic, I believe that there will be some up and coming students, graduates may want to embark a new journey, career in this field. Perhaps you can also give some view and advice. You are muted, I think. Cannot hear you.
Actually, George and Sri have already highlighted many things, actually. You know, people trying, actually it's a matter of credibility. What's going to happen with digital identity? It is actually going to have, you're going to carry a credibility behind it. Like today, for example, financial rating, if you want to take a loan, CTOS or CCRIS are the people they check, the banks check at the back, correct? So you want to make sure that your credit rating is high if you're going to go out and take a loan. But in the future, that's financial. There's somebody else doing it. Like what George mentioned, if a guy is coming to my house and he's going to say, I can do this for you. By seeing his IC, I only know he is him. But if the digital ID can keep all the information about him, and I can then find out, yeah, he has done hundreds of jobs in the place, and everybody has given him good rating. But today we see that through, you know, if you want to find out, you want to go to this hotel and stay, or is it a good hotel, you go and read the reviews, right? First thing you see, before booking the hotel, go and see the reviews. You know what I mean? And then you say, okay, lah, you know. But how sure are you the review is not made up, right? The hotel gets 10 fellas to just put up, lah, you know. It happens, right? So how sure are you? So this digital ID eventually will give you also a credibility. And that's what is important, actually, because everybody is going on to digital, right? You got your payment, cashless payment. I mean, the other day I went, I went to buy something in one of these places, you know, food stall, and suddenly he says, I was giving my credit card, and this guy says, I don't accept credit card anymore. He said, what do you want? Either cash, or you can use all my QR codes.
Oh, interesting.
No, I mean, they don't want to accept even credit card, because you know why? The cost of a credit card, you know, you have to pay that cost, right?
Okay.
So businesses are already going that way also, right? So a lot of people are going that way. So I think you're not going to be wrong adopting digital IDs. It's just that how safe you are, how protective you are, and how knowledgeable you are. And for the students, you know, I really think, you know, everybody, when I was doing my computer science degree, I got white beard, but I'm not that old, but it's just white. But years ago, everybody said, oh, you're the programmer. Wow, you do a lot of programming. Then when, you know, when low code, no code, you know, all those kind of things are being talked about today, everybody says, programmer got no more job. You know, I think, but somebody writes this low code, no code also, right? You need a programmer to write it. So in the same way, for students in the digital economy, cyber security, cyber related issues are very, very important. You need to pick this up as part of your curriculum. And it will be a good, good career path for students to get into this area also. Like what she mentioned, digital signing. People are not going to sign any more hard copy. They're going to do digital signing nowadays in a matter of time, you know, and the time is not very far away. And one more key area I want to highlight, taking on what George said about the father sending the son for the date. You know, it is very important, because you see, one of the key things we are facing today is cyberbullying, right? People join, I mean, youngsters, they join into various social media groups and all that. How do you say that the friends that you have are actually are people of credibility, right? So that you don't get into the cyberbullying part, because cyberbullying creates a mental health issue at the end of the day. You know, nowadays when you put up a post, the next they want to see how many likes, right?
Yes.
I had one of my somebody I know. So she put up the post, and then after about 1-2 hours, she was very upset. I said, "Why? I don't have enough likes." I said,
Oh, wow.
why are you worried whether the people likes it or not? Do you want, you put up the post for a reason, whether the people likes it or not, or people like it, but then that creates you know, a mental kind of a situation. So I think this digital ID will help somewhere lah. I hope it will help in the cyberbullying area, cyber world. So that's something that you have to look at. Youngsters, students, very good career path. I know C for a very long time, and I think C has been talking about security from the time I remember. So it's important anyway. So you're not going to. It's a good path academically to go, right?
It's definitely an important topic that everybody who has an interest and technically inclined or have a detailed mindset, they can always go for that. We are coming to almost the end of the program, but I would like to quickly get the three panelists to give your key takeaway so that we can sum up today's discussion. Can I get Mr. C to start first, maybe a minute or so on your thought?
Yeah, for me, digital ID, I will see a lot of benefit. Basically, I want to share takeaway for this digital identity implementation. Hopefully by 2025, right? When we have implemented, so there is improvement of the efficiency for all the government, e-services, and private sector, and also better customer or user experience. And important is the improve the security and enhancing the privacy. So that's all. Thank you.
Excellent. So, George?
I think I just have two key takeaway. First one would be for the consumer out there. Yeah. So definitely, you know, do not be afraid of digital ID. Yeah, it will come and it will be a norm, a part of our daily life. Try to look at what are the positivity that it can bring and how you can use it to you know, enhance your daily life. But at the same time, take precaution how you use it as well. So I think that is more for the, you know, for the point of view of a consumer, but definitely there are many things that it can, you know, help you to solve. And for the businesses also, you know, I think we need to start to be creative and to think how can, you know, this digital ID help in our business. You know, a lot of time when we talk to business, they have this fixed mindset that, oh, this kind of thing is only for us to, when we need to verify our customer, if we are giving our customer credit or whatever, you know, they are renting our car, then we want to identify them. Not really. Try to also think about how can it help you to run your business or organization better. You want to hire people, for example, you're in retail. Now you're going to give them the whole supermarket to manage for you, you know, the cash register, or sometimes delivery, you give them the whole company car, the company van, and the company asset and all that. You also want to verify your employees, you know. So for example, so there are many ways that you do it, and you know, and for other institutions, for example, you want to sign up student, how can this thing help you to also grow your sign up rate, you know, make it easy, convenient for people, especially youth today. They want everything fast, right? You ask them to fill in the form, lengthy form and all that, you know, they lose interest. How can you make it easy online, pre-qualify them, you know, get everything done. If you want to do whatever physically face-to-face, you do it later. But anyway, these days we know so many education institutions actually all their students have not even been to campus because of this pandemic. They sign up people online, they study online, you know, the student doesn't even have a chance to go to campus. So the big organizations are already doing it. What I'm saying, the SME now need to start to think, how can I also use this kind of technology? It's not necessary that it must be expensive. I think this is one thing that SME need to bear in mind. So not just the big organization can use, SME also need to think, how can we also reinvent ourselves by following up with this trend, and how can it benefit us, change your mindset. So I think these are the main two takeaway that I like to share.
Excellent. Excellent. So just nice for Mr. Nagan to continue from there.
Actually, I only have one thing. You can't run away from the digital world and the digital transformation that is happening. But the good thing is the government also has identified it, okay, with the My Digital Blueprint that they have come up with, right? So you have the authorities who are willing to support your initiative. So it is just not the private sector, but you got the public sector also moving it. And if you look at the timeline, that's why I mentioned today's newspaper was such a thing that says that 2024 is ready to go with digital ID. So people like us coming from the business side for software, we will make sure our softwares are in line with those kind of things, you know, and like everybody says, make it easy, make it, you know, people, the youngsters, they only live in mobile today. I don't know. They've forgotten how to write letters also, I think. Their WhatsApps and all that, right? So they are in the mobile world. So my takeaway in this whole thing is be aware, be knowledgeable about what are the pitfalls that is there, and be alert. When you go to any websites or any kind of you know, entity, just check their credentials first, and digital ID will allow you to do that actually in the future.
That's fantastic. So I have my 1 minute as well. Thank you all for sharing your perspective on this very important topic, digital identity. Incidentally, I'm not sure whether people in this group knows about it. October is also a cybersecurity awareness month, by the way. It's observed every October, but it's only in America. Created as a collaborative effort between government and industry to ensure every American has the resources they need to stay safer and more secure online, which is very much what we are talking about today. Not sure whether Malaysia will observe this month as a cybersecurity awareness month as well. Anyhow, with the digital economy continues to gain ground in our life, it is also everyone's interest and duty to ensure we use technology responsibly and keep the digital world safe for all, as we reap benefits from the deployment of technology, including drive differentiation with technology and digital, as well as drive digital productivity. We should play our role and continue to make technology more accessible and encourage more people to use the technology in a more responsible way. So with that, please join me to thank our panelists, which I enjoy a lot because I also learn a lot from all of you. See, George and Nagan. And if you guys are interested to know more, I encourage you to contact them directly. I'm sure that they'll give you, because just saw somebody ask for the slide. See, we don't have your slide. So perhaps the organizer can help to link you all up if let's say they are interested to know more. So with that, I'll return this floor to Mr. Zain, and then thank you all. Have a good evening.